Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode. I've got a fantastic guest for you today, Glenn Parker. He's an author, he's an influencer coming out of New Jersey. He's the author of multiple books, including Positive Influence. We're going to talk all about that. And he's a leadership and team effectiveness expert. He's been on numerous podcasts talking about leadership, transformational leadership, coping. I'm really excited about today's show and welcome Glenn to the stage. Welcome, Glenn.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah. I know we had connected and kind of set the stage for, your work and we'll dive right into the conversation.
Great. Let's do it.
Yeah. So, how did you get started and what experience led you to where you are today?
Oh my goodness. Well, I grew up in New York City, a street kid. Played all kinds of sports, mostly street games that most of the rest of the world has never heard of. But we made the best of what we had because we didn't have a lot of playgrounds and kind of organized fields and stadiums to play in. So we made up games that worked for the street and were relatively safe. Ended up going to high school and also to college in New York, City College, which was a municipal school that had the advantage of having a great faculty and the added advantage of being free to residents of the city of New York. So that's how I got to go to college. And then from there, went to graduate school for a master's at the University of Illinois, and then for a doctorate at Cornell University. First job out of graduate school, this is kind of leads into what we want to talk about today. I kind of thought I was a researcher, that was my role in life because I loved libraries. I loved looking things up and finding out answers to things. And so I got a job doing research that involved I would get an assignment from my boss, look up something about this topic and write a report. So I did that. Did research, and this is pre-internet, so you actually had to read a book. Research actually might involve also going to a library, and so I got pretty good at that, and there for a year, and toward the end of my first year comes up what? It comes up your performance review. And this was my first performance review ever. And so my boss, Larry, sits me down and we're going through my performance, what I did and how I did it. And he thought I had done a good job. I was good at looking up things and writing reports. Just between you and me, it was pretty boring stuff. But I had been watching the people across the hall that were doing leadership training, and they were traveling all over the country and they would come back with all kinds of stories about the people that they met and all across the country and across the border in Canada, and travel stories, of course, about getting stuck in airports and things of that sort. And they would seem to be having just a great time. So I said to Larry, this when it came to that time in the performance review, where you talk about your development plan, like what are you going to do going forward? What do you want to do? How do you want to improve? And I said, Larry, I think I might like to try that leadership training and leadership development. What I'd really like to do is sit in on a class and see if this would make sense for me. He said, "Well, Glenn, as a matter of fact, I'm traveling down south next week, and I'm going to be doing two leadership training workshops myself." And he said, "You can come with me, but there's just one thing. I can't really justify your travel expenses unless you teach something." So my lips start to quiver. Larry, I don't know anything. How could I teach something? He said, "We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out." And he did. I did. And it was a 2-day workshop. And I did the last 2 hours of the afternoon of the second day. So the group was warmed up, having a good time. So I kind of slid in there with my 2 hours of a topic that he knew, Larry knew, that I knew quite well, and it went very well. And I walked away and I was about, 2 feet off the ground because I thought, wow, I this is what I want to do. I love this. I feel really good about it. And the thing here that's really important is that Larry could have done this, which a number of managers might have done. He could have said, well, Glenn, I'm going to give you my notes and my slides, and you can teach the 2 days, and I'll sit in the back of the room and I'll give you feedback. No, he didn't do that. He gave me 2 hours in a time slot and on a topic that I knew and could be successful at. He positioned me for success. He positioned me for success. And that's what really great positive influence leaders do. They put you in a position to be successful. And that's what he did. And so I walked away from that saying, okay, this is what I really want to do. And of course, I had to get a lot better at it. And I did over the course of time, because he gave me additional opportunities to teach longer periods of time. And so that was my first experience with somebody who was a positive influence as a leader. I didn't realize it, of course, at the time, only upon reflection years later that I realized that this was a game changer for me. I started to move in a different direction, and it was in many ways life altering. I don't want to, make too much of it, but it did make a big difference. And so from there, I got into not only leadership development, then into organization development, and then into team development and the like. And then later on, I came to this idea because I began to, upon reflection, realize that there were quite a few people in my life that were positive influences. And I realized that I can't be the only person that's had that experience. And as our research shows in the books that we've written about the topic, many, many people have this kind of person in their life, and we need more of them. So that's my story.
Yeah.
I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, I love that. And one thing that really resonated with me during your intro was that these positive influences, and then this idea of because I resonate with you, going into library, I'm just like amazed, and just it's like kind of like your escape from the chaos of the world. And like just looking things up, researching. So kind of describe the research you did to write the book and the creative process, and then all of that. I'm just curious about your creative workflow and how you
Yeah.
harness that.
Well, yes. Usually I have to have some sort of, you know, some light goes off in my brain that says, there's something there that we could go with. Uh, and I had an experience later in life when I became a consultant working with this particular organization. And I realized that my client was a positive influence on me because he wanted to change his organization to be a more team-based organization. And that was something that I knew a good bit about. And I did that and took about year, 18 months to do that. And I thought, it was a project work and it would be done and I would leave and move on. And he said, there's something else I want you to do. And I said, what's that? He said, we need more, we need customer service training for our people because they have a lot of interactions with customers, both in person in the field and by phone. I said, well, that's not something that I do a lot, but I'll help you find someone. He said, no, I want you to do it.
Yeah, yeah, I love
And I
that.
said, well, I don't know that much about it. He said, you'll learn.
Yeah,
All he said was, you'll learn. And the way he said it was he wanted me to do it. And I did. And I learned it and I was able to do it. And he gave me several other experiences like that where I had no experience doing something, but he believed that I could do it. And he became quite insistent on it. And he was right. In my hesitancy, my maybe perhaps lack of confidence was not justified. And he realized that he, again, saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And this is one of the key characteristics. So it happened, unfortunately, that years later, because I maintained a long-term relationship with this man, that he passed away, and I got a notice that there was a memorial for him. And I was clearly going to go to the memorial. And I thought, well, maybe they may ask me, because I knew him for so many years and had worked for him, they might ask me to do an eulogy for him. And I started to think about his impact on me, and it was tremendous. And I realized that he had been a positive influence on me. I started to think a little more seriously about this. And I thought, gosh, I can't be the only person that's had a person in their life like this. I think that's a book I'd like to write. It would be inspired by him and dedicated to him. I called up my son, who I don't work with. He works in a completely different industry, but he's very much up on the literature of leadership and management. And I said to him, this is what I'm thinking about doing. I'd like to write a book about positive influence leaders. And he said, I'd read that book, which was, oh, he's very honest with me. And I said, oh, really? I said, how would you like to write the book with me? He said, I would love it. And so we set off on that journey. And we were looking, when we started out, for a profile. What are the characteristics of a positive influence leader? What are the things that they do that have this great impact on people? And in doing the research, we asked people, we were looking for this profile, and we asked a diverse group of people, diverse in terms of the types of work they do, their backgrounds, their ethnicity, their gender, all sorts of diversity, because we wanted to be sure if this covered everybody. And so it did. And we discovered that there was no one type of positive influence leader. There were different types that were able to influence people in different ways. All of them helpful, all of them positive, but slightly different. And so we identified out of that 4 different types or 4 different styles of positive influence leader by looking at all the data that came in from all of these interviews. So we identified someone that we called a supportive leader, someone who is obviously very supportive, that says, let me help, I can be there for you, I got your back, that sort of thing. I'm not going to do it for you, but I will help you get from here to there as to where you want to be. The teacher, and this is the person that teaches you what you need to know in order to be successful.
Yeah.
In other words, for example, Larry taught me some particular tips and techniques for teaching a class. Even though when you know the material, how do you communicate that in a way that people will use it and remember it and use it? And the teacher also teaches you about values, like the right way to do things, how to be a moral and just person. And then we had somebody we call the motivating positive influence leader. That's somebody who helps you find that true north, find your purpose in life, find what you're here on earth for, what you're supposed to be doing. And that's what Larry was to me. He was that motivating leader. He found that true north within me. And then there's the role model. And very often people have role models. This is someone they look to and say, oh, that's how you do it. Do this and not that. And I'm funny, I'm looking upward as I'm talking to you. And we do look up to that person because it seems like they have it right and we can learn by observation. And the interesting thing too is that sometimes those role models are someone we've never met, because a lot of famous people, like Oprah Winfrey, will talk to you about Maya Angelou, someone, well, she eventually met her later in life, but she was a role model to her. Um, I'm a big sports fan, so many basketball players look to Michael Jordan. He's an iconic figure, and was a role model to a whole generation of basketball players that came after him. By the way, the key thing about having Michael Jordan as a role model was not to copy his jump shot. The thing to do was to emulate his work ethic. The person that is the first in the gym in the morning and the last one to leave at night, the person that doesn't leave until they can make 90 out of 100 foul shots. That's the kind of thing that people get from a role model. So I could go on, but you kind of get the idea
Yeah.
that there's four different types, all of them helpful, all of them useful. Some people do more than one. All of us have the capacity to be all four within us. We just happened to use one more than the other. It's our prime or preference as a role model, and that applies in leading in a time of crisis as well. But
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
you brought up, like I said, I didn't want to interrupt because you have so much wisdom and knowledge, and I love talking to the generation because they have so much experience and just soak it up, and it's just like kind of these mentors, and like I can remember, like there's like mentors that just make you hate your profession just because they're, quite frankly, and then there's others who inspire you, and that's kind of like like these role models, and then there's like ones that were deceitful, and you're like, okay, I don't want to be like this person. And so I love this idea of role models. How can people follow you, check out your book, check out your work, reach out to you, etc.?
sure. Well, there's a website where we have a lot of the information. It's www.thepositiveinfluenceleader.com, and you can find out information. And we've also written a lot of articles based on the research from the book, and so it's more than just the book or the two books. And many of those articles are up there. Also, this people may find interesting because people started telling me their story. I'm going to ask you shortly who was a positive influence on you. And many people wanted to tell me their story. Well, it was my mother who helped me, or a teacher in the first grade that inspired me to want to read. That sort of thing. And some people, by the way, told us about negative influences. We can talk about that because that's kind of fun as well. If you don't have to live it, it's kind of fun. If you can talk about it, it's a lot more fun. But so yeah, the people. So what we did was we said, let's create a blog of people's stories. So on that website, you'll see something called stories under blog, stories of positive influence. And it's people just said, this is who my positive influence was, this is what they did. And then we made some comments that how it fit into our little view of the world.
Mm.
So on there, you can certainly, I'm very active, I think, as you know, on LinkedIn. And so we post a lot of things on LinkedIn. And we'll also do the same with this podcast as well. So here's an offer, if I might, to your listeners. First, let's say the first, I'm feeling in a holiday mood. So the first five people that send me an email. I'm going to give you the email address in just a minute. So
Yeah.
if you're picking up a pen and finding a piece of paper, it's the first five people that write me and give me their mailing address, I will send them a complimentary signed copy of our latest book, Leadership in a Time of Crisis.
Yeah.
If they agree to buy a copy
Yeah.
of the book and then gift it to someone else, pay it forward, because one of the characteristics of a positive influence leader, and I think you were going to tell a story similar to that. Someone who was when you benefit from a positive influence in your life, you tend to be the kind of person that pays it forward. They help other people in the same way. And that's what I've done my whole life, is to try to help other people who want to write books or become a consultant or just be a better person. So anyway, if you send me an email with your mailing address, and I promise you'll not be added to any mailing list. I don't have mailing lists, so don't worry about that. We will send you a signed copy of the book if you agree to purchase a copy and give it to someone else. So the address is Glenn, Glenn, at thepositiveinfluenceleader.com. Glenn at thepositiveinfluenceleader.com. And I guess you can put that in the show notes as well for the podcast. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah. And for all the audience out there, let's thank Glenn for coming on and dropping a lot of advice and wisdom. And like I said, I love reminiscing about mentors and people that had a positive influence, as well as negative ones too, and not to be named, but just kind of what not to do, or
So
what not to be like. So,
so let's hear you tell us who was a positive influence on you.
well, I mean, I had a lot of like in-person positive influences, like my parents, teach me the value of the dollar, the value of
Yeah,
hard work, the value of grit and hustle. A lot of med school mentors, like a lot of my histology professor, they all call them crit, just people. And then a lot of my influencers were through books and reading. Steve Jobs, Bill Gates. Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, all of these, you read about these fantastic people changing the world.
right.
And then, negative influences, not to be named, but just kind of, in the medical profession, it's quite prevalent and, in the world as well. So we'll leave it at that. And with that, thanks so much for coming onto the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and happy holidays to everybody.